All right. Sherry, are we good to go on recording? Good. Maybe, maybe not. I see nothing. Nope, we are. Cool. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Willis, and I'm with the Maryland and DC Deaf Blind Project. And so today we're going to talk about some calendar systems and tools for communication for children with deaf blindness. My screen would advance. So first question starting off is why should I create a schedule for my child? Why would I need to create an object schedule or a picture schedule? What's the purpose? So first thing is developing a routine. Everybody follows a routine. This helps our kids to anticipate what's going to happen in their day. And maybe if you're a family that doesn't already have a really good routine established, this is a way to help you kind of develop one to get your child in a routine to be able to anticipate the things in their day. Anticipation of what's going to happen next. Some parents may say, I don't need a schedule. My child follows a very strict routine throughout their day. They know everything that's going to happen because we do everything the same way. But so, for example, if we're going to take a bath, you might give your child a bath at the same time every evening, but we take a bath sometimes at off times, maybe after swimming or after, a meal if we get really dirty or before we're going out somewhere really nice. So even things that happen within a routine may happen at times outside of that routine. And our children deserve the opportunity to be able to anticipate when those things are going to happen and have that information. Provides information in a mode that's accessible to the child. So for some of our children, they are missing that incidental visual and auditory information that we as hearing or sighted people get by being aware of what's happening around us, hearing the microwave as it beeps to let us know that food is being prepared, seeing somebody come in the door and know that somebody's arrived and a change is going to happen. All of those things. So this gives our children a concrete way to get that information about what's going to happen. This provides a concrete label for the activity that the child can refer back to. So how many of us, even as adults, you're preparing to go from one activity to the next, from one room to the next, and between the living room and the bedroom where you were headed to do something, you forget what you were headed there for. Or on the trip between point A and point B, you realize that, oh, you forgot to throw the laundry in the washing machine. And so you get distracted and never actually end up at what you were headed to do. So our kids also need that opportunity, that reminder of where they're headed to, especially if they are in the learning phase of learning, that concrete learning phase of language, where they are still trying to make connections between a concrete label, so an object that maybe refers to an activity, and what that activity is and where we're headed to. So in that concrete phase, they need to be able to repeatedly have opportunities to refer back to something that reminds them, oh, right, I'm going to take a bath. Oh, right, I'm still headed to take a bath. We're traveling upstairs to head to take a bath. Those opportunities to refer back to that item again and again and again. And as for, for some of our children that are independent travelers, it's a way to kind of redirect them without having to provide such consistent prompting. So if you're working with a child in a school system, hopefully someday we will be back to doing that. Between the classroom and the music room, having a concrete object that child can refer back to is a way for, if they get distracted and start veering off down a different hallway, you can kind of prompt them back using that object or that tangible symbol to remind them where they're supposed to be headed to, so that they can have more independent participation in the activity.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Somebody is not muted. If somebody could possibly mute, if everybody could just mute themselves. Thank you. Thank you. And so later on, it also may be used as a way for the child to request that activity. If these symbols, these object cues or tangible symbols are provided to that child in a way that they are able to access them at other times during their day, they might be able to go over and use that symbol to bring it to an adult as a way for them to request an activity at a later time. I am going to stop sharing real quickly to see if I can find who needs to be muted. Looks like we got everybody now. Okay. All right. So what should my child's schedule system look like? Really, we're going to kind of talk today about maybe what the ideal should look like, but especially in these odd times when everybody's at home and learning in a different way and school looks different and schedules look different, and families are responsible for providing all of this input to our children, it's really whatever works best for the child and the family. Whatever you guys are able to create and consistently implement is really what's going to work best. The key is consistency. And so determining something that you can do and really implement consistently is going to be your best bet, rather than creating something that's big and extravagant and really looks nice, but doesn't fit into what your family needs or is able to do. And so then it's kind of becomes meaningless. We know for our kids that they need to hear a word 1,000 times in order to be able to understand it and implement it. So if this is something, if this is a symbol or cue that we're only going to give them once a week because I forgot it again, I left it in the other room, or not this time, I'll get it next time. Our children are never really going to be able to learn what these symbols mean and use them in a meaningful way, receptively and or hopefully expressively in the future. So it's all about developing something that can really work for your family and your child to be successful. And for some families, if you guys don't have a routine, this might be even more of a reason to create an object schedule that gives you a chance to prompt the child for what's going to happen next, because they don't have that consistent daily routine to follow to know what's going to happen. Why am I going into the bathroom? Am I going because it's time to work on my potty schedule? Is it time to brush my teeth? Is it time to take a bath? And so one of those activities might be really positive and reinforcing for the child, and another one might be really negative and the child doesn't enjoy that. And so using a schedule system allows you to prompt that child into what they're going into the bathroom for. Is it the thing that I really, really like, or is it the thing that I don't like? And even if it's the thing that I don't like, I still have the opportunity to be prepared for going into the bathroom for that. If we don't prepare our children for when they're going in for something good versus bad, then that anxiety or that fear that it's always going to be the thing they don't like is going to set up in them before we even get them to the bathroom. So this gives them just a chance to be prepared for and know what they're going into. In this day and age, with parents working from home and multiple siblings being online and doing school at home, you might even need to create a independent play symbol, something that you give to your child, a sensory toy or a favorite stuffed animal or something that signals to them time that mommy's not able to engage with them, or that mommy or daddy are not available to be with them. And so that is their independent time, just so that they're aware that you might need some time away to help other siblings or take care of other tasks, but it gives them something to have with them that signals that that's their time when they're not going to be engaged with. And then when mom or dad are done with whatever they need to do, you'll come and you'll take that symbol away, and then it's time to be engaged with again. So that might be something that needs to be added to the schedule. So a schedule system can include as few or as many objects as you can manage. Typically, we always start with the most consistent activities through the child's day that happen. A lot of times meal times, bathroom times, brushing teeth, taking a bath, going to bed. You know, those are things that we do on a daily basis that can really be reinforced daily, if not multiple times a day, to help the child understand what those objects mean and the activities that they refer to. But again, it's whatever works best for the child and your family. And we always start with the most concrete things, which are going to be real objects. So for parents who are nervous and stressed about having to create something or buy something or go out and get something, really, if we're starting with real objects that are going to be used in the activity, it's going to be your child's toothbrush, your child's loofah for bath time, your child's spoon for mealtime. So these are items that you already have in your home because they're what the child is already using within that activity. So there's no reason to create something or make something big and extravagant. If that's not the level that your child is at, you can start with the real concrete objects that they have. And then as you are capable and as your child demonstrates understanding of those, you can build on that if you'd like to. But so we're hoping to make this as least little stress as possible. So here's a hierarchy of our symbols in determining what to use with the child. We always want to start with the identical object. So their shoe that lets them know that it's time to put their shoes on to go outside, or they're giving them their toothbrush to let them know it's time to go brush their teeth. And then after they are able to make a connection between the identical object and the activity that it refers to, then we can move to what we call some tangible symbols, or which might be a partial object or an associated object. So not exactly their shoe, but it's another shoe that we use, or it's a smaller version of a shoe that might be mounted to something that then informs them that they need to go and get the object that's used in that activity. Or it might be just the head of the toothbrush, and they know that that refers to brushing their teeth, so then they go to the bathroom and get their toothbrush. Then we move down to photos, which are exact photographs of objects that we're using. So it would be a picture of their toothbrush or their bed. Then we move down to a picture symbol, which might be a more abstract drawing. Then we would move down to print or braille as accessible for the child, and then spoken words or signs. And so spoken words or signs, we want to include exposure to receptive language at all times, no matter what we're presenting the child with. We always want to provide them with a robust receptive model of language. But spoken words and signs are the most abstract when we're looking at providing them with a symbol to really give them information and hopefully eventually allow them to express information back to us. Spoken words and signs are at the bottom because they disappear. When we say something or when we sign something, it's then gone. And so just as we were talking about before, in traveling between point A and point B, if I'm telling you it's time to go take a bath, then you have nothing to refer back to between the living room and the bathroom to remember that, oh, right, we were going to take a bath. So those things disappear. So just from
Okay, Jen is trying to reconnect. Her internet just died. She is working to reconnect. There she is.
Sorry, this is fun. Internet's back. Okay, let's try that again. So this is for anticipation calendar using object cues. So as we were talking about, we're using the whole object that the child's going to use in the activity. So for example, in this picture, this might be a toy that this child uses during free play time or whatever it may be, but that's going to be so that the child takes that actual object to whatever the activity is and plays with that actual object in the activity. So for bedtime, that might be their favorite stuffed animal that they take with them into the bed and sleeps with them. As we talked about before, that might be their, oh, I'm not presenting. Why am I not presenting? When am I not presenting? Can people not hear me? Do we not see the slideshow? Tell me, Ann, what's going on?
Jen, you need to put your slideshow on.
Well, I see it. Why does nobody else see it? Huh. All right.
Try it now.
What's happening? Hey, there we go. Okay. The beauty of virtual. Fun times. Okay, it's good now. Cool. Awesome. So again, this is an ideal example if you're starting with a child that is starting with one object at a time. There is one object in a bin that lets them know this is the next activity, and then there's an equal empty bin next to it that is what we call the finish box. And so if you have the opportunity, the availability, the space, the materials to set up two boxes or two containers, one to put in the next activity and one to create a finish box, awesome. If you're at home and things are traveling around with you everywhere, that might not be feasible. That might not work for you because you might not have one specific place to set that up in, or it might not be feasible for you at the beginning of every activity to take your child to one location, take an object, and then come back to that location at the end and put it in the finish box. So again, create what works for you and your family. I have seen even, you could take a plastic bin like this, dollar store plastic bin container, and put in the materials that you're going to use, your child's objects. So if you're lucky enough to have the chance to go out and go shopping.
Well, I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Question?
I'm just curious where the interpreter would go, because we'll need to have the interpreter on screen for Danny for questions.
Do we not? Oh, Sherry, you're talking in our session. Did we not mute her? I think she's talking in her other session on us. Let's mute her. Okay, there we go. This is fun today. This one's extra special today. Sorry, guys. So I went to the dollar store and just got a plastic bin, and you can put in any kinds of materials. You can, if you can get duplicates, exact duplicates of your child's materials, maybe, the same rubber duck that they use in the bath, and just an extra diaper, extra, you got 2 pairs of shoes, or 1 shoe here and 1 shoe in their closet type of thing. Great. If not, you can totally use this or not use this, and right before the activity that you're going to do, go up and grab their child's toothbrush and bring it down and say, it's time to go up and brush your teeth. Or go grab their spoon out of the kitchen and bring it to them right before the activity and say, it's time to go eat, let's go to the kitchen. Again, it's got to work for you and what's able to be consistent and feasible for you to manage on a daily basis. So if you want to keep a collection of items, that's great, or bring things to the child one at a time. If you have some sort of container like this can also be the thing that you present to them out the item beforehand to say, we're going to go take a bath. And it's the same thing that then they put back into that bin at the end when they're done, as if to say that they're finished. So it can work in whatever ways you guys need it to work out so that it's successful. Thank you, Amy, that we're handling tech issues gracefully, because this is a cluster today. I appreciate the feedback. All right. So how do we kind of start this process? The process of providing a child with an object to cue them for an activity is we would show them the symbol. So let's take mealtime as an example. You bring the child their spoon, hand them their spoon, tell them that it's time to go eat. So we always want to pair the symbol with the language that goes with it. It's time to eat, it's time to take a bath. And especially if we're using objects, whole objects at this level, it's also good to pair it with the language for what the thing is. I have your spoon, it's time to go eat. Here's your stuffed bear, it's time to go to bed. Here's your rubber ducky, it's time to go take a bath. So that they are getting the language for what the object is itself, as well as the language for what the activity is that it matches with. Later on, if you're using tangible symbols, which might be an adapted object or part of an object, we might just say it's time to go take a bath, because that symbol is not a whole object in and of itself. We would then say that for when we get to the bath time to say, you know, here's your rubber ducky in the bathtub. It's time to take a bath. So we're going to show them the symbol, their spoon, for example, pair it with the language. Here's your spoon. It's time to go eat. And then right away, go to that activity. So if we're in school, for example, and you give the child their spoon and it's like, oh, but wait, I need to pack their stuff for recess afterwards, or, oh, I got to collect some materials, or something happens, that moment of connection is going to be lost. So as soon as we give them the symbol and let them know where they're going, we need to go to that activity so that they can make that connection with, we're headed to that thing that this symbol refers to. And then when we get there to that activity, if it might be a traveling upstairs or to a different room or down a hall, we want to, again, refer back to that to that symbol and say, remember, you know, we're going to, here's your spoon, we're going to eat. We're now at the kitchen, we're gonna eat. So just again, referring back to that connection between this object refers to this activity that we're gonna do. And we take that symbol with us from wherever we prompt the child initially to say, hey, we're going to eat. Maybe that's outside, maybe that's in the living room, wherever it is that we initially, where they are prior to the activity, that we prompt them to say, it's time to go eat. We give them that symbol and then carry it with them. So that might mean a variety of things too. If your child can't independently carry some objects, is it that, you know, we've got that some sort of place that, you know, a pocket that they can stick it in, or if you're carrying them, you know, can you just refer back to it and help them to have that spoon there with them, that it's, you know, making contact with them, or it's visible, or again, just referring back to it multiple times. Still have your spoon, we're going to eat, you know, here's your spoon, play with it, you know, you touch their lips, you touch their hands, you know, whatever it works, just to kind of, again, referring back to that symbol and the activity that it refers to. And this is what we do with young kids all the time, about just that repeated language modeling that matches what we want them to eventually understand. You could Velcro it to them, and I love that idea. You could create, anybody who's crafty and creative, create a vest for your child that's got some Velcro on it and Velcro it to them. Create a bracelet that's got Velcro on it, Velcro it to them. Absolutely. Get creative and find ways to attach it to the child or attach it to you if you're carrying the child. Definitely. Great idea. Yes, all about creativity. And again, how it's going to work for you guys to be consistent. So then, like we said, we're going to reintroduce the symbol and refer back to it during the activity as well. You know, just a reminder, again, that repetition of language and modeling, again and again. And then when the activity is done, we place it in something, we do something with it to let the child know that the activity is done. So that might be putting it in a finish box if you have one, putting it back in the bin it came out of to let it know it's done, but in some way, just doing something with that symbol to put it somewhere, even handing it to mom. Like if you hand it to mom or dad and say the activity is done, just so that they have something to know there's been a conclusion and there is a difference between the duration of the activity and when it's over. Yeah, and Anne mentioned an oversized t-shirt with Velcro attached to it is a great idea. Yes, anything that creative wise to come up with different ideas and ways to be able to bring those symbols with you from point A to point B, because it does get tedious after a while. If you're like, wait, I got a bin of things and then I have the actual cue and then I've got the child and then maybe I have their materials, like it could be a lot. You could get weighed down. So we do have to get creative in ways to be able to manage all of those things so that it can become a kind of, again, fluid system that works for consistency. So these are just some examples of calendar systems that can build. You know, we initially start with one object at a time, the thing we're going to do next, and then when it's a box for when it's done. And then if families are creative and adventurous, or when our children get back in school, this is typically something that happens in school where they have the space and the time and the staff and all of that to support it. Can create a building calendar system from first then, so doing 2 activities, to building an entire day. And this becomes a really nice literacy activity for working on left to right. It becomes a great communication activity for talking with the child about their day, especially if when we go to school, every day is different. Maybe we have different specials or different activities. It's an opportunity for the teacher or an aide to have a conversation with the child about the things that they're going to do in that day. As the child begins to start understanding the routine and knowing the days of the week and what happens on certain days, it can be an activity where the teacher or the aide bring the student in the morning and say, okay, it's Tuesday. What do we do on Tuesday? And let the child see if they can build the calendar system and have an inclusive part in that activity of putting in the activities of their day. You might find kids will play with these as a way to communicate and move symbols around because they'd rather go to recess, play outside, as opposed to do math. And so then it can become a conversation of, oh, I know you really like to go play outside. We have to do math first, and then we're going to go play outside. Or giving them opportunities throughout the day to make choices. Is there a free period of time where the child can choose between a variety of activities that gives them some control over their day? So calendar systems really cover a variety of purposes in addition to just letting the child know what's going to happen. So then we can move up from whole objects. Once the child demonstrates that they have an understanding of the whole object and the activity that it refers to, then you can move on to some tangible symbols. And we know for our kids with CBI, we need to be mindful of how we create these tangible symbols, the background, the complexity of the item, how abstract it is, those types of things. And for our kids with CBI, if you're working with a child with CBI, think about, if you're starting from the very foundation of objects and or tangible symbols, start thinking with the future in mind, because we want to create calendar systems for those children that are going to be able to build with them in an accessible manner. So from an object that can then become a tangible symbol that is still CBI adequate, that could then be translated into a photograph, possibly, that can then move to, you know, a printed word or a more abstract symbol. So just thinking ahead of how to build those and the items that you're going to use for that purpose can help you along the way to not get stuck with something that really is not going to look good in a photograph, or might not be feasible as a tangible symbol because it's too many colors or too abstract or whatever the case may be. So just think ahead. But we can create tangible symbols like you see here, and a tangible symbol is always mounted. I took a communication webinar myself provided by the National Center on Deaf Blindness, and the thing that I really took away from that was objects are objects. They are a thing that are that is used by itself. Tangible symbols are mounted because they are not objects. They refer to an activity. So these things are mounted because you can't use them by themselves. You can't use that toothbrush. It's glued down or it's stuck to the piece of cardstock. So it's not a toothbrush. It's something it's a symbol that represents an activity. So that's the difference. That child would then need to be able to recognize that this toothbrush refers to teeth brushing. So I need to go and get my toothbrush. And so on the right is just another example of some tangible symbols mounted on different backgrounds for different purposes. And we do know for certain activities, there's not a symbol that directly correlates, circle time, different abstract activities. And so it's just thinking about creating something that is tangibly unique. Like you see down in the bottom right, for the multi-sensory room, they've picked these two pom-poms, which hopefully are tangibly different for the child than the other objects that they have on their schedule, so that it's easily still recognizable. And again, it's that repetition and that pairing that's going to help teach that child what that symbol represents. And so then again, we can move to picture symbols. If this is where the child is at, then they move up from tangible symbols. We might be using exact photo objects of the thing, or something within the activity, or we could be using possibly some abstract drawings, like you see up in the right-hand corner. Those are some board maker symbols. And as we all know, be very, very careful with those abstract drawings because they can become very conceptually complex as to what they represent. So of course, photographs are always our best option, or realistic drawings. But you can use these to create a bunch of different calendar systems that could even be mounted on a wall somewhere, or put into some, a binder or something and be carried around with the child. So it can create some more expanded systems that they can use both as a calendar system as well as maybe a communication board. So when we're choosing symbols, we always have to remember to think about, does the student have the concept of symbolism? Do they understand what the symbol that we are using refers to as the actual object? So in this example, if we were to give this child just the cap of the water bottle, would they know that that cap of that refers to that water bottle? Because hopefully that water bottle is the water bottle that they drink water from every day. And so that would be, they would be able to make that connection because they've had experience with that water bottle and the cap, and thereby know that it refers to that. But we need to make sure when we're choosing symbols, does that child have knowledge of how the symbol that we're using pairs with the referent that it's referring to? And we also have to think about iconicity when we're looking at how abstract we're choosing either our symbols or our icons and picture symbols when we get to that level. So you'll see we have here, an icon, which the water bottle is an icon because it has a physical resemblance to the thing that it signifies. Hopefully this is the water bottle that the child uses every day, and this is what they're familiar with. And so this has a physical resemblance because it looks exactly like it. Then we get a little more abstract and we move next to the index. And so this requires some background knowledge and some conceptual understanding. because the child has to have prior knowledge of a faucet and a faucet that looks like that. And understanding that water is blue and that it's coming out of the faucet. So there's a lot of pieces there and prior knowledge that the child has to have in order to understand what this image is referring to. And then we can get really abstract, and a symbol bears no recognition to the thing that it refers to. And so this is actually the symbol for water. And even I, as somebody who knows water is H2O, I probably would not recognize this as H2O if I just saw the symbol without knowing what it was. So symbols are something that have to be learned because they don't represent, there's no resemblance to what they're referring to. So remember, letters and numbers are symbols. The number 4 means nothing to anybody if you don't know that it refers to a quantity and how many it refers to. So if we're picking letters and numbers, they are conceptually very abstract. And in layman's terms, a way to think about iconicity is it's the relationship between an image and the real thing. So if we're picking a photo, even if we're doing photo symbols for a child, what's that child's experience with banana, for example? If that child only ever sees banana in the form that you see in the picture at the bottom left-hand corner where it slices, they get slices of banana on their tray. If we give them a photo symbol of a whole banana, are they going to be able to recognize that that refers to the banana slices that they get on their tray? Or if we show them a whole bunch of bananas, are they going to be able to recognize that that is a bunch of the one banana that they usually get when it's time for snack time, or the one banana that shows up in their lunchbox at lunch? Do they know what a banana peel looks like when it doesn't have a banana inside of it? All of these pieces we need to take into consideration, and especially for our children with deaf blindness, because they are missing that incidental visual information to maybe see that whole banana that comes out of the lunchbox that the teacher or the aide peels for them and slices for them, and the peel that's left that's thrown away at the end. So they miss all of that. So we have to really take into consideration the incidental learning that they're missing and how when we choose specific symbols. And so I love this picture. The director of the Hawaii project sent this out on Facebook the other day, and I thought this is a perfect CVI picture for people to see, and even not a CVI, but just that even photos can be visually or conceptually complex. This was a great example because this is a spider actually eating a giant cockroach. And so I had the salient feature knowledge to know, based on all of these legs, that this was a spider, but I even had trouble figuring out, and I wonder if I can change, nope, I was gonna try and draw on it. Maybe not, but this thing up at the top kind of left of the spider, I still can't figure out what that is, and I can kind of see the legs of the roach and maybe make out part of its wing, but I'm still not exactly sure what I'm looking at here. So even if it's a photograph and it's not complex, there's a plain background, all of those things are in place, and we do all of those modifications that we think make it a very clear image, it still may not be able to be understood by the student if they don't have all the knowledge that they need to be able to interpret this image. And also, I love Hawaii, but this, I don't know if this freaks anybody else out, but the fact that this exists there maybe makes it a little scarier. So in addition to using our either tangible symbols or objects or picture symbols or whatever we're using as calendar systems, they can also be used for communication purposes, maybe as a choice board to allow your child to make choices between the activities of their day. Maybe it's also used to take photos or objects of their favorite things that they have to play with to make opportunities for making choices. And these are just some different examples of ways that people have created choice boards, objects that are mounted. In the bottom right, you can see objects that are in CD cases, photos, picture symbols. So again, it can be whatever works for the child at their level of understanding and whatever's feasible to be created and mounted or provided in some way that the child has access to it. That's really the main key point, is allowing the child somewhere that they can have access to these things to be able to communicate to others what they want to do. And communication is both about making requests as well as making comments and talking about things that they've done in the past. For example, I'm working with a student who recently got an adapted bike, and her mom has taken her out on the adapted bike, and she really, really likes it. And she has now figured out where it is in the living room, and she will actually crawl over to the bike and kind of pull up on and stand at the bike. And this is a really cool thing that she's able, she's now independently moving about her environment, but also that she's going over to this thing. And Mom and I discussed that it might be A, that she's asking that she wants to go ride the bike again, or B, that she's just kind of recapping and reminiscing about the day before when she rode the bike, and using that as a way to just kind of prompt Mom to the conversation of, I remember when I rode this bike yesterday and I really enjoyed it. So children can use objects, pictures, whatever they have before them to make requests, but also to make comments and just start a conversation about things that they've experienced or things that they like to do. And it's really about us as the adults to interpret that message and fill in with the language that they're not able to provide us with spontaneously, which might be oh, I see you're touching the bike. I know we went yesterday and you really, really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun. We went really fast. And just filling in that story for them that they're trying to tell you just by going over to that object. Or you can prompt them with the question of, oh, I see you with the bike. Do you want to go ride your bike? Maybe we can do that later. Let's look at our schedule as to when we can ride our bike for the day. So for parents, this is something that if your child is going to school, or now that, if they have a new teacher or a new team, or when they do go back to school, determining items that should be on a choice board or in a calendar system or used for expressive communication is determining what their likes and dislikes are. The things that are most motivating to our children are going to be the things that they want to communicate about. So for parents or teachers, this is a great way to just kind of make a list of things that you see that the child really, really likes. And there's an equal and exact form for the dislikes, to know what are the things that the child might want to express about that they want to get rid of or that they don't want to do. Because it's equally as important for our children to be able to express something that's really positive to them and know what they like, as well as what they don't want more of or what they dislike. It's expressive communication, and we need to reinforce that and respond to it appropriately. We all know that some of the dislikes that our children have, we can't necessarily reinforce all the time, because sometimes we have to do these things, but still being able to respond to their communicative attempts in, oh, I know you really don't like to brush your teeth, and I'm really sorry, but we have to do this. Or I know you really don't like to get on the bus to go to school, but I'm really sorry, it's time for the bus, we've got to go now. But still being able to recognize that they are communicating about something and respond to it still reinforces that communication and hopefully builds it to want it to happen again and again. If we don't even respond to it, then our children realize that their communication attempts have no meaning, and then they might stop. So we always want to respond and reinforce that, to at least recognize that they are communicating to us. All right, so how do we use these things to kind of build on some of our children's expressive language? And this is a whole nother webinar session talk in and of itself. So these are just a few key highlight points to hit on for everybody while they're here. Is, as we talked before, we don't want to limit their expository language We always want to make sure that we are exposing them to full, complete, robust, receptive system. But we need to make sure it's accessible for the child. If that child is deaf or hard of hearing, then that means, you know, providing them with access to sign language. It might mean also providing them access to tactile sign language if there's also a vision impact as well. So just making sure that we are providing them with accessible, expressive language. And if we want that child to use a certain modality expressively, they need to see others modeling that modality as well. Be that whatever it is, signs, gestures, an AAC device, objects, tangible symbols, whatever that is, we need to be modeling that for them as well, so they're not the only ones using that modality. And when we're providing them with a robust, receptive exposure to language, we just want to remember to isolate and emphasize some of those key words that we want the child to either imitate or use independently with repetition. So we don't limit what we tell them, but we kind of take the time to kind of like emphasize or isolate and repeat those key words that we're hoping for them to use expressively in the future. Be that signs, spoken words, AAC, you know, things on the AAC device, whatever that is. Because as somebody who's working to learn Spanish, if you give me a word, you know, a few key words, I've got that. But when they start stringing together as sentences of and strings of language, I'm lost. It all sounds like one thing to me. And so I can't kind of pick out the words that I know. I need to be able to repeat those later on and use those myself. So really just kind of emphasizing that key vocabulary that we want our kids to use. We talked about determining what's motivating for them. Again, they're going to communicate about what's most motivating to them that they want to get or to tell us. And those are the things from that, hopefully that likes and dislikes form, figuring out what's most motivating for the child, and then making object cues or tangible symbols for those things to help them have a way to express that they would like to do those. And then we want to actively observe the child's actions during a motivating activity. For our most complex kids that are not giving us a lot of expressive communication, ways that we can start building on some expressive communication is to do things that we know the child likes. Maybe that's swinging, maybe that's bouncing on a ball, whatever that might be. Maybe that's playing with a toy that vibrates, whatever it is. And then if we do that with them and we pause and we wait, we see what they do in response. Does the child do anything with their body, a vocalization, a facial expression, something to indicate that they might want more of that activity? And then we acknowledge that, because we as the adults have to interpret their message. It's often going to be a unconventional gesture or something that's not it's not going to be that they might not start signing more right away. It might be something that's just a movement of their body, whatever it might be, a vocalization. And so we need to respond to that and interpret that message and say, oh, I see you want to do that again, and continue with that activity. And then shape that if we see that it's not an appropriate or a safe gesture, like maybe if the child only uses crying to express that they want more, or possibly a self-injurious behavior, but we want to reinforce their actions as communication by doing something again. And remembering that with our deafblind children, that they often they receive a message based on the experience of an activity that they experience, the tactual and the movement of it. What they do in the activity, how they experience it, and the physical or the tactile experiences that they receive from an experience is going to be how they're going to remember it. So while to us it might be abstract language that we use to describe something that we did the day before, for our deafblind children, it might be how they felt in that activity as the way that they're going to use to kind of recap it or express about it. So for example, we might use the sign jump to talk about a trampoline or jumping, but this actually for a child that's deafblind, it requires not only two hands, but also, you know, the symbolic gesture of that these two fingers represent legs and the movement. So really that's very complex, whereas for a child that's deafblind, it might be simply the, you know, if they have their hand on top of yours, the up and down, because what are they feeling? They're feeling their body go up and down as they're bouncing on a trampoline. So maybe, you know, I'm not saying don't expose them to the sign for jumping or trampoline. We can certainly expose them receptively to the sign for it, but then also giving them some sort of cue or way of incorporating that experience, that physical experience they have had within that activity as a way for them to possibly make that connection and something that they could use later to express about that activity that they experienced. And again, providing repeated opportunities for the child to practice using the gesture to request more or request something that they really like. Just repeated opportunities to practice that engagement and that communication with others. We're going to help them expand their people that they talk to, the number of gestures, the places that they communicate about, all of those things, because always remember it's better to have 10 or 50 even random gestures rather than one formal sign. If that child can ask you for 20 different things or make 20 different requests for the things that they like or the things that they need, but they don't have any formal signs, that's still a whole lot of communicative intent that they have and a lot of conversations that you can have with that child before they ever get to one formal sign. And you will get there, but we have to build on that first. So we want to definitely look at depth and breadth of language before we look at having them have maybe one, you know, something that's formalized that everybody's going to understand. Because nowadays with technology, you can take, you know, pictures, photos, video, create a Google Drive folder for the child's team of the gestures that they use or the things that they talk about. So there's lots of ways to inform others of how that child expresses themselves so that multiple people can reinforce what they're communicating about. And we're done. Yay! Even with all the tech issues, we made it through it. So are there questions, thoughts? Thank you, Sherry, for putting up our poll. If people need a certificate, please just email me. We can probably stop recording.